with us, welcome. It is now 2 o'clock, but I think we'll just hold off a minute before we get the council meeting going. We're expecting a couple more members of council. We'll just give them 2 or 3 minutes to see if they can get on. We have enough members to quorum to start, so we'll just, as a little courtesy with technical difficulties and so on, to give them a chance to join us. So just bear with us and we'll get rolling.
I've just sent them an email to see if they're having any issues.
Okay. There's Sherry. Hi, Sherry. Welcome. We're waiting on Councillor McCabe yet a little bit too. We'll get started shortly.
Okay, thank you. I had trouble getting on.
No problem. Well, hopefully Councillor McCabe will be able to join us, but I think we're 3 minutes after 2. I think we might as well get started. So welcome everyone to our council meeting in February. I guess today is the 9th, I think, right? 8th. And so with that, I'll call the meeting to order. And the first item we'll deal with is the adoption of the agenda. So I have a motion here moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that the agenda for the February 8th, 2020 regular meeting of council be accepted and passed. Any questions or comments on that? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we'll move on to disclosure of pecuniary interest this afternoon. I have none to declare on today's agenda. Councillor Hearn?
No.
Councillor Yake?
No.
Councillor Burke? You're muted, by the way.
No,
Okay, thanks, Sherry.
sorry.
Okay, that's quite all right. So next item on our agenda is a presentation from Grand River Conservation Authority. Is it Samantha Lawson that's joining us for that, Karen?
No, it's Sonia Radoja and Karen Armstrong. I have just moved Sonia in. I believe Karen is with her.
Okay.
Sonia, can you hear us? I'll just send her a quick email.
Okay.
Where'd she go?
She just
Hello?
popped up with
Oh,
video.
there you are.
Are you able to hear us?
Yes, we
Can
are.
you hear us? Thank you. Sorry about that. We weren't getting the options at first, and then it wasn't happening very quickly.
Okay, welcome. The floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Oh, thank you so much for having us. I'm Karen Armstrong. I'm the Deputy CIO, and with me is Sonia Radosha. So I'm just going to adjust our screen here a little bit to get both of us on the camera. I'm Karen Armstrong, and across the table from me, at a very far distance now, is Sonia Radosha. She's our Manager of Corporate Services. So we're here to discuss the 2021 draft GRCA budget. We would like to acknowledge Bruce Whale as our board representative for the townships of Mapleton and Wellington North. Please be assured that he represents your interests well, and he is a very engaged board member. We're very lucky to have him. We are unable to see the slideshow, so I'm...
Sorry, I don't have it up yet. Just give me a second. I'm trying to, files, hold on. Actually, and I'm going to move Bruce into the meeting as well. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, just a minute.
Can you change the view in the top right corner? Are you able to see that?
Okay,
Oh, no.
can everybody see that?
Yep.
Karen, Sonia, can you see that?
Yes, thank you. Yes, we can. If you could move to the next slide, please.
I don't want to touch anything, Karen, just in case.
So the Grand River Watershed is the largest in southern Ontario. The Grand River and its tributaries lie at the heart of one of the richest, fastest growing regions in our province. Next slide, please. The Township of Wellington North and the County of Wellington are a vital part of the Grand River Watershed. We know that the future prosperity of the watershed, its municipalities and communities are linked to the health of the river, its tributaries, and the natural environment. The Grand River Watershed faces important and evolving challenges. Next slide, please. Our water management plan addresses the management of surface and groundwater resources in the watershed and identifies three main challenges as we move into the next few decades: population growth, balancing extensive agriculture with our watershed demands, and climate change. With the pressures of increasing population, more frequent and extreme weather events, and intensive agricultural practices, a holistic watershed-wide approach to managing water resources and natural hazards is needed to ensure our communities thrive and continue to grow in balance with the natural environment. Next slide, please. The GRCA operates a range of programs in engineering, planning, land management, recreation, and education. Our strategic mandate is to develop and implement watershed-based programs that protect people and property from flooding and erosion, improve the health of the watershed, connect people to the environment, and manage our land holdings responsibly and sustainably. Our programs balance human, environmental, and economic needs so that we can deliver on our vision of a healthy watershed now and for future generations. We work to build relationships and trust with our watershed partners to achieve our common goals. Next slide, please. So one of our strategic priorities, as mentioned, is to protect life and minimize property damage. Warmer air and water temperatures, bigger rainstorms, and longer periods of drought are all consequences of climate change. This poses new challenges in managing floods, improving water quality, and securing water supplies for municipalities, farmers, industry, and the natural environment. The GRCA owns and operates 7 large multi-purpose dams and reservoirs. These dams are actively used year-round to manage river flows and were built to work as a system to address frequent and severe flooding, extremely low summer river flows, and challenges with water quality. Next slide, please. The GRCA operates the Grand River Flood Forecasting System, which provides real-time monitoring and forecasting of weather conditions that affect the Grand River watershed. Recent improvements to this system include the implementation of a product called HydroMaster, which provides us with a much higher level of weather forecasting data, as well as more comprehensive data to support our decision-making when flooding is imminent or occurring. Next slide, please. Through a memorandum of understanding with Wellington County, the GRCA provides technical advice to the township on Planning Act applications and other planning documents, including input from our biologists, water resource engineers, and resource planners. Next slide, please. Another of our strategic priorities is to improve watershed health. The GRCA delivers a voluntary rural water quality program on behalf of 6 upper-tier municipalities in the watershed to help farmers implement best practices to improve and protect surface and groundwater quality. Each program is locally developed with input from the farming community, and variations in grant rates and eligible projects are tailored to reflect local priorities and budgets. Since 1998, almost 7,000 projects have been completed with $20 million in grants and more than $56 million invested by municipalities and landowners. Next slide, please. Specifically in the Township of Wellington North, in 2020, 6 projects were completed with $13,000 in grants provided by Wellington County. These projects included cover crops, well upgrades and decommissions, and tree planting. In the last 20 years in Wellington North, $1 million has been provided in grants to 388 projects, worth more than $2.9 million when combined with the landowner contributions. Next slide, please. Further to improving watershed health, the update to the Wellington County Chapter Grand River Source Protection Plan is currently being presented for public consultation until March 8th, 2021. We are working together with the county to support Wellington source water protection for plan implementation. Next slide, please. In 2020 and 2021, the GRCA completed sub-watershed characterizations for the Nith and Upper Grand. Natural heritage systems provide a variety of ecosystem services to communities, including a clean supply of ground and surface water, erosion control, flood moderation, pollination services, recreation opportunities, and many more. Natural heritage systems also provide significant benefits for maintaining biodiversity and a resilient landscape. The Natural Heritage System Framework has a number of potential applications to support other studies and projects. The information is also a resource to help guide existing stewardship programs, such as the Rural Water Quality Program, and to help prioritize conservation actions. The watershed's natural heritage system will continue to play an important role in natural infrastructure, ecosystem services, and building resiliency for climate change. Oh, are we being skipped ahead? We're sorry. Oh, forward a couple.
Sorry. Okay.
That's okay. I'm sorry if we're taking longer than expected.
No, I thought I was doing something else. Sorry about that.
Okay, next slide, please. It's connect people with the environment. And next. And I think maybe the next one. Nope, the next one after that. Thank you. Another strategic priority is to connect people with the environment. We know that spending time in nature has a positive effect on people's physical and mental health, and we've certainly seen an increase in the use of our properties over the past year. At the GRCA, we connect people with the natural environment by providing environmental education programs and access to outdoor spaces. A vital part of the watershed's recreational infrastructure, our conservation areas host over 1 million visitors a year and are important parts of the local economy, hiring local staff and supporting the vibrant tourism industry in our communities. Next slide, please. And our last strategic priority, responsible land management. With increased population, the demand for access to GRCA lands has increased. Natural areas, especially near urban centers, are experiencing a significant increase in public use. We are working to develop management plans for these areas to identify both environmentally significant areas and areas where public access is suitable. We also enter into agreements with our municipal partners to help facilitate recreation where possible. So that's it for our strategic priorities, and I'd like to hand the presentation over to Sonia Radoja, our Manager of Corporate Services, to discuss the 2021 budget.
Next slide, please. So the main budget challenges that we see in dealing with our budget this year are to prepare a budget prior to understanding fully what the provincial regulations will mean in terms of mandatory and non-mandatory program service areas for our authorities. So we have to contend with that. And secondly, we're contending with all the uncertainty and restrictions related to COVID. Our budget will be approved at the end of February at our board meeting. We've been presenting, started draft presentations in September, and as I said, it'll be approved at the end of February. Next slide, please. In terms of the fact that there's uncertainty around program delivery under the new regulation, we are continuing with the status quo assumptions in terms of how the levy works and having all our programs in place and levy as we have in the past. New regulations are maybe anticipated in early 2021, and working groups have been established, and we are part of that group as well, have representation on there directly. Next slide, please. And in terms of COVID, where COVID has hit us really hard was in certain self-generated revenue. And our revenue generation was, before COVID, about almost 50% self-generated. We were significantly hit in the parks. We went from like over $9 million in revenue in 2019 to just over $6 million in 2020. So that was a significantly hit area. Our outdoor education basically has not been operating since the spring, and it's slowly coming back now, but with looking very different from what it was before. And we certainly had some incremental COVID costs to put in place all the protocols that were required, but we also recognized savings in a number of administrative expenses. So we're sort of hoping that when the incremental COVID costs are offset by some administrative savings while we're operating in this environment. Next slide, please. Basically serves to highlight that our operating budget is about 80%, and that we have special projects that are about 8%, and then our capital budget's about 12%. Next slide, please. Basically, the operating budget's about $25 million, and it delivers sort of these broad mandates listed here: our watershed management, our parks, our education, and corporate services and communications. Next slide, please. In terms of the capital spending that's on the table right now, there's just under $4 million. These are sort of standard amounts. They will probably change before the end of February. Our water management budget is driven by where we landed, what work in progress we had at the end of last year, and what it's looking like in terms of approvals from the province on projects that we would like to undertake, starting with their fiscal year of April 1, 2021. And the conservation areas now is right now trying to limit the amount of spending, is carrying forward projects from last year, given the decline in revenue. But that's sort of just building up and some, eventual infrastructure needs type thing. Next slide, please. And we have special projects, and the reason we like to separate these out is because we like to highlight the fact that these are activities that we engage in where we do not rely on general municipal levy allocations. Source protection is a big one, and it's currently funded by the province 100%. And Karen spoke about rural water quality, their municipal initiatives. And another big one is our Emerald Ash 4, where we got permission from the province to utilize reserves that the province has an interest in to assist with managing those costs. Next slide, please. And just serves to highlight again the relative reliance on the municipal general levy, which is about 40%, and self-generated was typically a higher piece of the pie, but given the parks were so heavily hit, it's coming in right now at about 43% of overall funding. Next slide, please. Then the impact of all our budget deliberations right now are to go with a 2.5% increase corporately, bringing it to just over $12 million in levy, which represents about a $300,000 increase. And we split that levy up between operating and capital, and capital was held constant, and it's just the operating that went up somewhat. Special projects, as I mentioned, do not require levy funding. Next slide, please. And in the context of North Wellington, the highlighted, green highlighted item indicates that because of the pro-ration methodology of prorating levy, the North Wellington is going up 4.5%, or it's going up from about 51,500 to 53,700. Next slide, please. And another way we like to sort of define our activity is in terms of a per capita levy, and that's at just slightly over $11 based on approximately $1 million people in the watershed. Next slide, please. And that ends our presentation.
Okay, thanks very much for your presentation. I guess I'll just open it up for any questions from members of council. Anybody have questions?
I don't think so.
Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to frame it. There was some restructuring, some positions that were eliminated at GRCA, some which were pretty forward facing, and I was sad to see them go, to say the least. And I was just wondering if someone could provide some sort of context or some framing for that for me.
Without getting into specifics, I can certainly try to that. Over the course of 2020, as Sonia mentioned, we did experience financial challenges as an organization, and we initially had some temporary layoffs, and there were a fair number of employees affected, and then we had some additional layoffs as we progressed and as we realized that some programs were going to be affected for a longer period of time or in a greater manner. And so we had to make some difficult decisions to evaluate efficiencies and to really look at where we could restructure to change things in the long run going forward based on what we see as both short-term and long-term changes in certain programs.
The regulations.
Yes, and sorry, as Sonia just indicated, the Conservation Authorities Act has been updated relatively recently as part of the budget bill, and there are further regulations that are coming out that are going in a different direction from what we have seen historically. The details are just still being worked out. They haven't been released yet, but we are working to align our organization with the direction that we have received so far with respect to mandatory programs under the Conservation Authorities Act. And really what that means is mandatory programs are the programs where we can use municipal dollars to fund them. And that's not to say that the other programs can't continue with municipal agreements. So that was, certainly that was another factor that we were using to evaluate how we proceeded.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I just had a quick question, and this may be one of those questions that's kind of impossible to answer, but do you have any, in your budget deliberations, do you have any expectations of revenue recovery for 2021 based on your experience in 2020?
Yes, I think we're a lot more optimistic for our parks because, there was a lot of shutdown and they didn't allow us to open until mid-May and even end of June. And now I think even in COVID environments, the outdoors are very highly valued. So I think our seasons will start up more normally in the time. Certainly there will be more restrictions on how many people can come in and how many people can camp. But I think we're projecting them to be better than last year. The school program was completely shut down. But we are seeing some of the school boards coming back to the table. So we're going to be have maybe a bit more optimism than otherwise, and assuming it's nil.
Okay, thank you. But your budget assumptions is based off of your experience from 2020, is that correct?
It'll take it into consideration and I think be a little bit more optimistic, but yes. And most of our other program areas are expected to be back to normal. Even our tree planting. Last year, we totally canceled the spring tree planting program. Right now, it's hopefully still set to go.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have questions? Karen?
Just wanted to point out that Mr. Whale is in as a participant. I'm not sure if he wants to speak or.
Do you have anything you'd like to add, Bruce?
Thanks, Lennox. I really wanted to be here just to hear the discussion. I think they've fairly clearly outlined some of the issues. Well, it's been a big year trying to adjust to some of the things that were happening all around us with COVID, and then with some of the government moves to take some of the authority away from conservation authorities, not knowing where we'll end up. But I think it was through the efforts of staff that we went from about a projected $6 million loss back to a small profit. We're still not sure, I shouldn't say profit, but on the positive side, that we'll be able to be put into projects here, and you'll see those final figures at our February meeting. But some big changes and some disappointments, but really happy to see the way they reacted. And one of the big things they've done now at all the provincial parks is they virtually have a live system available that people can go online and see capacities of the different parks, know whether they're going to be able to get in if they wanted to come to go camping. So something that'll be used, I think, even beyond COVID, that will help with capacity. But an interesting year, but certainly a frustrating one. Even trying to learn how to operate online is a new talent that we didn't think would have to develop so quickly, but they've done very well. Thanks for the opportunity, and anytime you want an update, please let me know.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Any final questions anybody has? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So again, thank you for your presentation, and we all wish the best for the authority for the coming year and the challenges ahead. So
Thank you very much. Same to you.
With that, we do have a recommendation here moved by, we still don't have Steve with us, do we? No, so moved by Sherry, seconded by Lisa, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the Grand River Conservation Authority 2021 draft budget. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor Lennox, Councillor McCabe just emailed, he will be joining us shortly.
Okay, thank you.
Can we?
Okay, we're on to adoption of a minutes of council and public meeting. So I have a motion here moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the minutes of the public meeting and regular meeting of council held on January 25th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Any questions or comments on those minutes? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next, we have business arising from previous meetings of council, and this afternoon we have the notice of motion brought forward by Councillor Burke. I'll just read the recommendation. Be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Wellington North requests that staff include the high, healthy, happy model, the altitude above sea level, along with the community name Mount Forest, and any painting or repainting of the water tower in Mount Forest. And I moved by Councillor Burke. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Yake. And I'll open the floor for discussion then. Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor Lennox. Since the last council meeting, I've continued to receive a tremendous number of communications regarding the fate of the high, healthy, and happy motto on the standpipe, better known as tower here in Mount Forest, during its rehabilitation. Nobody seems to know exactly how the motto came about. I've checked with our local historians. Some think our motto has been around, the motto has been around since the late 1930s. Others through a naming contest by a former mayor. We do know for certain that it's been around since 1948, thanks to a recent photo in the Bisbal. I wish to thank all the residents that have shared their stories about our motto that greets you from high above as you arrive from the south, and why they wish it to see it stay. Although the motto has an unknown history and it's somewhat of an urban legend, it should be preserved and valued. We also know for certain that we are one of the highest points in Ontario above sea level at 1,407 feet. Everybody remembers the high, happy, healthy motto, and it's great for tourism too. I ask council to please support this motion and preserve the town of Mount Forest's motto for the residents of Mount Forest, who are a proud part of Wellington North.
Okay, thanks, Sherry. Anybody else? Dan, go ahead.
Well, I've had numerous emails. I'm sure the rest of council has had numerous emails over the last probably 2 months or so. I completely support the motion. As a lifelong resident of Mount Forest, I certainly remember it being there as a kid, and I think it's something that the people of Mount Forest should continue to enjoy. It's not a major issue I think that council should deal with, but it's one of those things that really can get people upset, let's say upset. So I really want to stress that Sherry's motion has my complete support, and I hope that it gets unanimous approval and support from council.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Anybody else wish to speak on this? Steve, go ahead.
I apologize for being late. I got a new computer, so I was having a little bit of trouble logging in this afternoon, so I apologize for that.
That's okay. Welcome, Steve.
Yeah, I've gotten a number of emails last week and in the week before, kind of to what Councillor Yake was saying, and I'm in favor of this too. I mean, it's a nice thing to greet you on the way into Mount Forest, and it adds a certain charm to it, I think, as well. And I'm for this. I mean, no sense of painting over it. We can just retouch it.
Okay. Lisa, do you want to weigh in?
I don't really have a whole lot to add. I'm in complete agreement with it. It is certainly a part of Mount Forest history, and it would be a shame to cover it up.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's completely appropriate that we keep it there and prominently on the water tower or standpipe, whatever term we want to use. I think it's a really good idea, though, to also make sure that we keep the altitude there. I mean, some people who see the motto don't really necessarily always recognize why high is a part of the motto, and of course that also leads to some misunderstandings. And of those residents who I heard from that had some concerns, that was the issue, of course, that was front and center. So I think the idea of keeping the altitude with it is important to help everybody understand what the origin of the high, healthy, or the high part of the high, healthy, happy is as well. It's great that we can celebrate that and the history of it, but I believe that helping people understand the origins of it too is a good idea. So, Steve, I saw your hand up there. Did you want to add something?
Yeah, if you didn't mind, through you, Mayor, I was just going to say I wanted to thank the people that had taken the time to write an email to me or to all of council, just with their opinions. And it's nice that they have love of their community. Doesn't matter what community in Wellington North it is, but it's nice to see that, and I'm glad they took the time to voice their opinion.
Yeah, I would agree. Any other final comments then before we deal with this? Okay. So we have a mover and a seconder, or I guess we'll call the motion. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council.
Okay, so that brings us now to our items for consideration on today's agenda, and there's a few of them. So we'll go through those and pull out those that we'd like to have some further discussion on. Anybody feel free to start us off.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind 1C,
Okay.
what deals with the rec committee we just had, and then 6A.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Lisa?
Could I pull 1B, please?
Okay. Any others? Sherry, go ahead.
Can I have 3A, 6B, and 6C?
Okay, 6B, 6C. And you said 3A, is that right?
6B and C. I think
Did you say
A's already been pulled.
A
Did you
was
say
already
3,
pulled.
3A as well?
3A, yes,
Yeah, okay. So that's the business retention and expansion.
correct.
Okay. Okay, any others?
So just to recap, we have 1B, 1C, 3A, 6A, B, and C.
Think so.
Okay. I think we should do 5B as well. Okay, any others? So let's just do a recap of what we got so far. 1B, 1C, 3A, 5B, 6A, 6B, and 6C. And that's all I've got. Is there any others? Mike?
Just before we leave this section, Mayor Lennox, I just wanted to highlight for council that the information regarding the Walker all treats, there's a report in there, and then the bylaw as well. So and based on it not being pulled, everybody I think is comfortable with it, but I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware the bylaw was there as well.
Okay. So the report would be a good opportunity to discuss that if anybody has concerns. Okay, thank you. Any others anybody would like to pull out for discussion? Okay, so just let me get organized here for a second. We'll deal with all the others. So I have a motion here moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that all items listed under items for consideration on the February 8th, 2021 council agenda, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved and the recommendations therein be adopted. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So that brings us back to 1B. So in regard to the Arthur Business Improvement Association January 20th meeting. And we have a recommendation here that I'll say is moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the minutes of the Arthur Business Improvement Association meeting held on January 20th, 2021. And with that, I'll open the floor for discussion. Lisa, go ahead.
I asked to have this pulled because I was going to speak to this in my council reports section, but I thought it made more sense to discuss it during this report. With regards to the curb extension, you'll see a diagram there. We had another discussion with BM Ross, and that location is not going to work. Where it is, the trucks for Foodland, they come in the Foodland parking lot, go around the back, and then they come out through that alleyway and then turn left and head down to Freshco and Fergus. There would be no way for them to turn left. They'd have to turn right and then go down residential streets. That clearly can't happen. So BM Ross has found another location that we think will work. So I didn't want anyone to think that that's where it's going to be, because it's not going to be there. Did anyone have any questions about that, or is that pretty clear?
Okay, anybody have questions about that? I just add a comment to that, Lisa, and that is that I had a few comments from questions from people about what the intent of what we're proposing to do in downtown Arthur is. Some people were raising concerns that it was going to reduce it to a single lane of traffic through the center of Arthur or restrict flow of traffic significantly. And I've had to answer a number of those questions, and perhaps the new name for this proposal as a curb extension is a good idea, in that it maybe is a little clearer as to what the intent is, rather than the previous, what do we call it, a choker. That seems to have put a few people off. So I think it's good that we be clear about it, and also about where it's going to be, so we can share that information as soon as that's available. That'd be great.
Yeah, we're looking at that very closely. Of course, we want to make sure that it's going to work. It's permanent. So, I mean, there have been concerns about loss of parking and things like that. We're actually going to gain a parking spot when we close off the alley, if that gets done. So, I mean, there's not going to be much loss there. And no, it's definitely not going to restrict anything down to one lane. It's not going to restrict anything any more than it already does. So, couple other things on there. As you see in the report as well, the outdoor gym that's going to be installed by Park and Play at the same time that they do the Optimus Park. So it's good to see that we got some synergies going on there, and some efficiency. And I just wanted to bring up Wednesday night, you, Mr. Mayor, and Councillor McCabe have been invited to a joint Arthur Chamber BIA meeting to be there in the afternoon. So I just wanted to, or at 7 o'clock, I just wanted to highlight that.
Okay, and so will a formal invitation be sent out with that to that, Lisa?
I think you received one.
Yeah, Dale sent it out to us, Andy.
Okay, I must have missed it then.
Sent the invite, and I replied that I would join, be happy to join, so.
Mhm.
Okay.
The chamber
I'll-
meeting starts at 6:30, and we're gonna have a short chamber meeting, and then we'll go into the BIA meeting at
Okay.
7.
Yeah, my, as some of you have alluded to, my email volume has been a little more than usual in the last little while, so I might have overlooked it. Matt, did you have something you wanted to add? I see you popped up there. Yeah, go
Yep.
ahead.
Yep, through you, Mayor Lennox. My only comment would be, is that staff still working with Park and Play to come up with a number as it relates to how much it costs to install that exercise equipment, but we are, I mean, that makes a lot of sense, and Park and Play has the capability. So we're just working through that right now, the logistics.
Okay. Okay, any other questions or comments in regard to this item? Okay, call the motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Next, we'll go to the Recreation, Parks and Leisure Committee from February 2nd. Karen, do we deal with these recommendations all one at a time? Is that the way we need to go at this?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll start with the recommendation to receive the minutes. And I'm going to suggest that that's moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, and that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive the minutes of the Recreation, Parks and Leisure Committee meeting held on February 2nd, 2021. So we do have we have 3 more recommendations to deal with coming out of that meeting. So there's opportunity for discussion at any point throughout there. So I'll open the floor for discussion. Any discussions, particularly in regard to those minutes? Steve, go ahead.
I was just going to just touch base on this. We did have the meeting, like I said, or the mayor said last week. One of the things I want to bring to council's attention is our decision as a committee to remove the ice in the Mount Forest Sportsplex in the Arthur Arena. It's not a decision that we've made lightly because it can affect employment, but it'll also affect the communities as well because we won't have any ice in. And I think Matt has some numbers, but I think it's about $5,600 to keep the ice in at both arenas, give or take. So there's that bit of a financial, wouldn't say gain because we won't have the ice in, but we'll be saving that amount of money. And yeah, I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention. And then there's some good discussion about Park and Play in the Optimus's new park that they're putting up. We had Shauna Lougheed in to have a bit of a chat with her, and they are going to be working with Park and Play to pick colors that'll kind of match what the Optimus's logos and I guess word mark is. And then at the same time, they're going to the Optimus's are going to kind of upgrade their pavilion that's there. They're probably going to paint it and put up a few new picnic tables and do some painting as well. So it'll be a nice refresh on that, and then it'll dovetail rail nicely into the new park that's going to be there as well. And that's really all I wanted to bring to council's attention, but especially the removal of the ice, because it's not the greatest news, but the seasons are probably pretty much over. So
Yeah, and that's the next recommendation we'll be dealing with after the minutes. So any other questions or comments at this point? Okay, so we'll deal with the minutes then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So the next recommendation we have coming out of that meeting is moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North direct staff to begin to remove the ice as soon as February 9th, 2021. And we'll open that up for any further discussion. Anyone like to talk about that? Go ahead, Dan.
I think just going back to what Councillor McCabe has said, it was a tough decision, and it's you know, our arenas are well utilized in the winter season, but with what's been going on and the uncertainty as to where we go, as how we move forward, I'm okay with this decision. It's only probably a month away than it would have come out anyway. So we'll get it out, and hopefully next year we can get it back in both arenas and have a great ice season.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Sherry.
So with the ice coming out and the uncertainty of how we move forward, as Councillor Yake has already said, is there any opportunity to move forward, especially in Arthur, with some of the work that has been proposed in the budget before we get into lacrosse season?
Matt, go ahead.
Yep, through you, Mayor Lennox. Great point, Councillor Burke. And yeah, staff are working to get a design done and get that out to tender, because it has been approved and it makes a lot of sense if the lacrosse season doesn't go this year, which is highly probable. So no, staff is working on that, and great point, Councillor Burke.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? I guess my own 2 cents worth was really, there is a certain amount of, sorry, let me start again. There's still a significant amount of uncertainty. I mean, we did have some announcement from the province today that we're looking towards some reopening, but we're likely going to be waiting at least another week for that. And then there's uncertainty as to what color, if I can use that way of describing it, in the framework that we will be launching into. So if we launch into red again, where we left off back in December, chances are the ice is still not going to be possible to be used. So we're down to a very short window of opportunity where the ice could be used if things open up again. So it's a hard decision to pull the ice out when we know how important those skating and hockey are to particularly the youth in our community. But if things do open up again, could we look at opening things up to, I don't know, ball hockey type things, or those types of activities that could help young people get out and involved if there is opportunities to do that. I guess it'd be nice to provide any kind of outdoor activity that we can, or just generally activities that we can within the framework that we're in at the time. I know that other communities have had outdoor rinks and have had them used to some extent. So yeah, anything we can do to, particularly for our young folks, to keep them active, I think is good, not only for their physical health, but their mental health as well. So I support the decision to pull the ice out. I just, if we can come up with ways to address the need that within the framework, I think that's something we need to try to do as well. Steve, go ahead.
Just with what you're just saying there with some of the other clubs, and to your point, Councillor Burke, I know Mandy talked to Brent McDougall about minor lacrosse, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase here, but they have, lacrosse has already received word that their season will be totally different. There'll be no tournaments and possibly smaller teams. And he said he isn't sure what the season looks like yet in Arthur, but feels this year would cause the least amount of disruption if we were to go ahead with the floor as we have in the budget, because there's no one using it kind of right now anyways. So just wanted to add that bit about what the lacrosse had on their mind. So
okay, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, it's just, and we're not the only municipality in the local area that's made this decision. A number of other municipalities have already done it, or I'm sure are thinking about it. So again, although it's tough, I think just the uncertainty makes it the decision a little bit easier to make.
Yeah. Anybody else Anything they'd like to add? Okay, we'll call that motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we're on to our next recommendation out of those Recreation, Parks and Leisure Committee. Still haven't got used to the name change. And this one's moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North approve the design concept option 3 motor skill mastery, which includes design changes discussed at committee and noted in the minutes and recommended by the Recreation, Parks and Leisure Committee. And this is in regard to the Optimistis Park in Arthur. Open the floor for questions.
There's a couple more clauses to that recommendation, Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Sorry, and further that a final design be brought back to the committee for approval, and further that once a final design has been approved by the committee, it will be forwarded to council for adoption by resolution. Thanks, Karen, for catching me up on that. Any discussion on that? Go ahead, Matt.
Yep, through you, Mayor Lennox. I would just say that option 3 for the park and play is felt to be the fullest sort of playground, and really the only thing that's a design feature that we'll bring through council and committee next is the color selection, which to Chair or Councillor McCabe's credit, he's already raised as far as, we're going to go with the Optimistis colors is kind of what the discussion was at committee. That's my only contribution to the conversation.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Certainly makes it clearer for me. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we have one more recommendation coming out of there. This is moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North approve the 2022 recreation rates and fees as recommended by the Recreation, Parks and Leisure Committee. Any discussion on that? Karen, did you have something?
I just want to say the amending bylaw, or the bylaw isn't on this agenda. It will be on the February 22nd agenda.
Okay. Matt, go ahead.
Yep, and through you, Mayor Lennox, I was just going to say, I think we're talking about 2022 rates, so we have some time.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or comments? And Karen, just to clarify, part of this is that we have to provide notice when we're changing those rates as well. Is that right?
That's correct. The notice will go out tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Anything further on that one? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That brings us to 3A. This is in regard to the Business Retention and Expansion Program. So recommendation here moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive for information report EDO 2021-04, being an update on the recently completed business recovery survey conducted as part of our Business Retention and Expansion Program. Open the floor for discussion. Sherry, go ahead.
Yes, so I just wanted to thank Dale for the work on this report, and I realized that it's a summary of a survey that went out, but I just really thought that there was a lot of really good information in here that I wanted to highlight it so that businesses that maybe aren't aware of some of the programs based through the questions that were asked, that it can be highlighted. A couple of questions through you, Mayor, to Dale would be, I see we're going to wait for the next round of OMAFRA funding in hopes to get some money through them to help with the reopening of the economy and businesses that are struggling. So I was wondering when that next round was available for submission. And also the second part would be is why some folks maybe haven't participated in some of the programs. Is it because they don't need them, or is it because they're just not aware of them?
Dale, would you like to weigh in on those?
Sure, through you, Mayor Lennox, and thank you, Councillor Burke. We're not exactly sure when the next round of RED funding will be announced. So the most recent round, the application closing date was February 1st. So we just weren't in a position to be able to meet that one. Our expectation would be the next round probably this spring or summer. So that was kind of our thinking on that one. In terms of why businesses haven't applied for funding or haven't reached out, it's really a wide variety of reasons. Like for some of them, it's a matter of really not being in need. You know, their businesses, they've stayed open, they've weathered the pandemic, their operations are good, so they didn't need to reach out for them. For others, it's a matter of not qualifying in some cases for the support. There's probably also, and I hesitate to say this, but there's probably also a small few who maybe don't have businesses registered properly. So if a business is not properly registered, whether it's with the province or whether it's with the federal government, then they run into challenges to be able to apply for some of this funding. So we don't require businesses to have business license to operate in Wellington North, but the province does require businesses to have a business number for remittance of GHT and HST and stuff. So I think some businesses are finding they need to operate a little differently from that perspective if they're looking to tap into some of the funding. And then for some of them too, it's just a matter of they're looking more for consulting funding than they're actually looking for dollars. Like we didn't hear where there's a large number of them that are looking for tax relief or stuff like that. But a lot of the smaller retail businesses are looking for consulting type support to help them with a variety of different things. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, Councillor Burke, but quite a wide range of responses on that one.
Okay, thank you, Dale. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we were doing our due diligence and our part to make sure that our local businesses have all of the opportunities that they need, and that it wasn't because of education, so that we could help them to restart and open up when that time is. For those that haven't evolved to different methods of curbside pickup and things like that, or online through the shop or Spotify type. Thanks, Dale.
I would just add to that too, Sherry, that I've had a few calls from some business owners who are struggling, and what I found is they just need to be directed to where they can get the help or get directed to some of those. And I know Dale has been very helpful with some of those calls and helping to connect the people with the resources. So I think we need to encourage businesses to reach out. It's hard to know all the programs and opportunities that are out there. So please, if you're a business owner and you're struggling out there, give us a call and ask the question. And we may not have the answer, but we'll try to direct you to where you can get the answer. And because we want all our businesses to thrive and survive this pandemic so that they can thrive on the other end of this. So. And I guess I would just add along with that too, when I read this report, I found it rather optimistic, to be quite honest. There's a lot of businesses that are still doing relatively well, but that doesn't minimize the need for us to support our local businesses however we can, and try to do what we can, by helping them get to the resources they need, or at the very least, making sure we're shopping local and using those businesses for as much as we can during this time of the pandemic. They're a part of our community, and we need to make sure that they stay that way. Dale, go ahead.
Yeah, just one comment or a couple comments I want to make on that. Certainly the shop local message is loud and clear, and people are catching the program, and a lot of our local businesses are really commenting on how the shop local movement really is helping them and helping them to survive. So we're going to continue to pound that message as well. The other thing too is this survey was actually completed before the recent lockdown. So while I would share your view, Mayor Lennox, that there was lots of optimism and within our Northern Wellington businesses anyway, a lot of positiveness. Yeah, the survey was before the most recent lockdown, so that may have impacted a little bit as well.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Lisa, go ahead.
I wanted to thank the businesses for actually filling out this survey. The response from Wellington North businesses was phenomenal. And especially, they've got a lot going on right now and a lot of headaches and paperwork and everything. And they sat down to do this survey. It really does help us it helps Dale to design programs to help us all through this. So thank you so much to the businesses. I also wanted to highlight, I was really excited to see the mental health support component in there. So good job on that.
And I think this is valuable to Councillor Hearn in regard to not only what we can do locally with programming, but also what the county's involved with in terms of programming on our other partners like the SEDC, the Saugeen, I can't think of the right name of it right now, Saugeen Economic Development Corp, our provincial government partners, our federal government partners, having this type of information to share with our MPP and MP and those other partners, I think is also very valuable. And you're absolutely right. The businesses are helping to keep the information flowing by filling out those surveys and taking the time to do it. So I think this is wonderful information for us to look at, to use in our decision making, but also to share with all of the other partners who can help, in the survival and well-being of those businesses. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. That brings us, I think, to 5B. This is the ops reports on the water and wastewater technical updates. And I'm going to say it's moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the Council of the Corporation of Township of Wellington North receive report ops 2021-005, being report on the water and wastewater technical update, and further that council direct staff to post these reports on the township website. Anybody have any questions or comments on those? Everybody's got the last detail memorized. Steve, go ahead. You're muted, Steve.
Just with what you had said there, Mayor, it was great detail and it was a good report. And yeah, it should be up on the website so that all of our residents can see it. It's a great report.
Okay, thanks. Dan, did you have some comments?
I just wanted to say the same thing, I guess, to Steve, that it's certainly a good report. It's thorough, and thank Matt and Corey and their team for putting the information together. It's pretty valuable and important information. So thank you once again.
Okay, Matt, go ahead.
Yep, I thank you through you, Mayor Lennox. I would say there's lots of big ticket items on that report that, you know, staff would be very interested in. Staff has put forward kind of what they feel is the recommendation, but if council feels differently about any of those projects, staff is open to entertaining those too.
Okay. I would just add as well that, yeah, these are important documents in terms of crafting the future of what our key infrastructure looks like. There's a lot of things on there, and some of the big ticket items has been talked about. But one of the things that I saw in there as well is a number of options discussed. So I had a couple questions I wanted to ask in regard to that. Do we need to go, like, is this through a formal EA type process that we need to adopt these? Or are we free to adopt them just on our own? What kind of, so I've got a few questions, I'll rattle them off and then we can kind of work through them. Is there, what's the public consultation component required for this? And also the other question, and this is more for other members of council, do we want to take some time to dig into these in more detail and talk about these issues? You know, we could defer, you know, we're not adopting them today, but we could defer these and have a special meeting to discuss them if that's what council wishes to do. So Matt, do you want to tackle any or all of those?
Yep, no, and thank you, Mayor Lennox. So I think any of the big ticket items are going to require an environmental assessment, which I think everyone on council has been through an environmental assessment. I'm not sure if it's a B or a C, but a B or a C, they both involve public consultation, the best I know. So there's going to be public consultation. But I think, you know, no matter what route we go, we're kind of going down a path where it's going to take some time to get to the end game, if that makes sense. And maybe it doesn't, and maybe I speak poorly.
No, that's okay. I think I understand what you're meaning, and I guess one of the things that I see is, you know, these are big items, and they're going to come onto our budget in the some of them going to come onto our budget discussions in the not too distant future, and a lot of them are very much growth related, and we're going to have a conversation about how we're going to fund those projects, because we're entering a period of more rapid growth than we've had in the past, and we may need to look at different options rather than funding it through our regular cash flow. So I think there's a lot of meat in those reports that are going to create discussion going forward, and I just want to make sure we get started or at least head down a path that everybody's comfortable with. Mike, I'll let you go first. I saw you, Dan, and
yeah, just to follow up on your point, Mayor Lennox, a little bit, you know, certainly there's significant financial impacts, but there's significant operational impacts too, as it relates to broadening the services. And beyond that, there are impacts within the community. If we're talking about new mass storage devices, whether it's a standpipe or a water tower in one or both of our communities, I think we know how impactful those things are, there can be in the communities. And then the idea of a new water source potentially in Arthur, like that's a major undertaking. And the water in Arthur has long been topical for well before my time. So these are, I think the reports themselves highlight the significance, but they are technical in nature. So I think there's more to the conversation beyond the technical standpoint and beyond the financial standpoint too, because these are have significant community impacts because as we've worked through our community growth plan, our recreation master plan, All of these things that we've kind of addressed as part of preparing for growth, this is just another part of that. And yeah, the conversations through the EA process, there is public consultation as part of that, but I think from a staff perspective, we're trying to make sure the council's as comfortable as we can be before we even get to the public consultation. That's a requirement of, you know, putting a new water tower in Arthur, let's say, or getting a new water source in Arthur, or putting another water tower in Mount Forest. There's the EA process, but I think there's also, we want council to be prepared well in advance of those actual processes. So this is part of that.
Yeah, and my question about the EA process too was around the alternatives. There's been some alternatives in those reports. There, 2 reports are presented in a little different ways, but there's alternatives, and I think we need to be thinking about those alternatives before we get to those EA processes or whatever it is we need to do, because of what you said, the community impact and what this is going to mean for the future. So, Dan, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, Mike kind of elaborated on most of what I was going to say, but we're all certainly aware of the growth that's going on here. We can see it, you know, we see it around us. We see it in township documents whatsoever. Mike, you just recently sent out an email to council in regards to giving us a bit of an update as to where we are with some of the growth issues and some of the considerations that we need to consider. So I think that we should try to have an extra meeting or 2 or more, whatever it takes, to discuss some of this stuff. We haven't really taken the time, I don't think, over the last number of months to really delve into some of these things, other than having these discussions at council. So I'd like to see us have a meeting or meetings in regards to some of these issues that we're seeing here today, and so that all the council gets just a better handle on where we are and where we're going and how we're going to get there. Because I don't know if we get enough thorough discussion in this format at a council meeting. So I'd really like to see us have some extra meetings to discuss this stuff.
So what do you think, Dan? Like a presentation of the report, then a chance for question and answer and discussion, or do you have a format in your mind as to what that should look like?
Well, I think it needs to be kind of broke down so that into, I'm going to say, simpler terms, so that we can all understand exactly what we're looking at, so that we can all be on the same page. I'm not exactly sure of the format, Andy, but maybe staff can come up with some kind of format that we can deal with.
Okay, Mike.
Just for consideration, and Councillor Yake referenced all of council, but I throw this out as a potential idea, just to try and move things maybe in a different, with the concept of maybe having one councillor from each of Arthur and one from Mount Forest, and being maybe more engaged in a conversation with the engineers and staff, kind of going through the reports, not the technical aspects necessarily, but more looking at the prioritization of the projects and the reasons why, and then that could come back to all of council at focusing mostly on the prioritization of the projects. Is that something that council would consider, or do we prefer that it's everybody going through it together?
Okay, Dan, go ahead.
I think we all need to be in it together. I really do. We all hear different things. We see things differently, and I think we all need. need to be involved, and certainly given the opportunity. If you want to ask the questions, that's fine. If you want to just hear, staff reports and engineering reports and take that for what they're worth, then so be it. But I think we all need to be involved, Mike. I don't, with these important decisions, I think kind of separating us might not be the best way. But I'd certainly be willing to sit down and listen to, an engineer's perspective or ideas on improvements to the drinking water system in our third, all that stuff, the upgrades to the wastewater treatment plant, re-rating of the Mount Forest wastewater. I think we need to hear that firsthand from engineers where we can ask the questions and go from there. I just don't think that this format in a council meeting gives us enough information and or time to kind of get to know what we need to know.
Okay. Did you have your hand up, Matt?
I'm going to say no at this point.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, council members?
I guess I could throw up an idea as far as, like, there was an open forum in council, I guess pre-COVID and also post-COVID. But, would that be an appropriate forum if staff was to provide a list of projects that council could talk about prioritizing those projects? I think staff could put together a list of projects that council could talk about, but I'm not sure. It doesn't really meet Councillor Yake's idea as it relates to, having the conversation outside of council, but that's another option, I guess, is what I'm going to throw out there. And I would suggest that should be a month out, because like next meeting, staff could put forward the projects and then council could consider what they consider priorities, because it's probably not, anyway, that's my thought.
I mean, we could potentially utilize your idea too, Matt, and just do it as a special meeting of council.
Yep.
So that if time is a consideration that people are concerned about, we have the opportunity for time, and if we had some, an outline beforehand, people can come with their questions, and then we can also deal with the questions as they arise as well. So I think some sort of a discussion format like that, probably with some sort of presentation and then an opportunity to dig deeper into the prioritization and the scope of the projects, I think probably is a good idea. I read through those reports and it kind of talks pretty lightly about, like Dan mentioned, the re-rating of the Mount Forest wastewater plant. Well, it's easy to include that in 2 or 3 lines of text, but that's a lot bigger project than 2 or 3 lines of text gives justice to.
Sure.
And the same with the water sourcing and the water supply, water storages as well. So maybe we just need to break it down and have a special, maybe more than one special meeting for a couple hours to just hash them out, maybe one community at a time.
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, I was just going to build a little bit in terms of, the reports. Yeah, I wouldn't say they gloss over, but they obviously highlight the need. But within that too, I think we all recognize that, there's things that need to happen, maybe more focused around infiltration. All these other things could be part of the conversation too, because we recognize the importance of, allocations and water conservation and what that will mean. It might have significant impacts on the amount of capital we have to spend if we're able to optimize our current infrastructure, including the Mount Forest wastewater treatment plant. So I think there's the report, and I appreciate Councillor Yake's comments. There's things connected to the reports that also need to be part of the conversation. So I think, a special meeting that's kind of focused on the growth infrastructure pieces is a worthwhile endeavor for sure.
Okay. So is everybody okay with that sort of an idea of a special meeting or meetings to go through some of this in a bit more detail? Okay, I think I'm seeing lots of nods, so I think we just need to figure out what that looks like, and maybe we toss that back in your court, Mike, with other staff to come up with a format and maybe suggest some times that might be appropriate for us to do that, and we can maybe get a start at it and see how we go from there.
Sounds good to me, Mayor.
Okay. Okay, we got any other items with regard to that motion that we'd like to discuss at this point? I mean, yeah, even the discussion around water meters plays into a bunch of this stuff too, so. Okay, I'll call the motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to 6A. This is in regard to the alternate voting methods for the 2022 municipal election. And so I've recommend a lengthy recommendation here I'll read, but I'll say it's moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report CLK 2021-005, being a report on the use of alternate voting methods in the 2022 municipal election be received, and further that Council authorizes a vote by mail method for casting ballots in the 2022 municipal election, and further that Council authorizes the use of tabulators for counting ballots in the 2022 municipal election, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the bylaw to authorize a vote by mail method of casting ballots in the 2022 municipal election, and further that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the bylaw to authorize the use of tabulators for counting ballots in the 2022 municipal election, and further that the clerk shall by December 31st, 2021, prepare procedures and rules for the vote by mail method of casting ballots in the 2022 municipal election, and provide these procedures and rules to the public by posting them on the municipal website. Okay, anyone like to discuss that? Steve, go ahead. You're muted, Steve.
There we go. Sorry. Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I wanted to thank Karen for this report. And I just wanted to bring attention to it just because I think it is very proactive and gets us out ahead of the schedule for the next municipal election in 2022. And thanks, Karen, for putting that all together and seeing what other municipalities in the neighborhood are doing as well.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Anyone else have any questions or comments? So, Karen, this is basically what happened in the 2018 election, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. I know that during that election period, many people I talked to liked the vote by mail method, particularly for those people who find it hard to get to a polling station or an advance poll. However, I did hear also some comments about people who like a more traditional voting experience, and I just was wondering, maybe this isn't the most appropriate time to talk about it, but is there a way that we could continue to do the vote by mail as proposed, but also provide a place where, say, one place in Arthur and or Mount Forest, well, both, where people could come and drop their ballots off in a more traditional and see their ballot handed over and put in the tabulator type of thing. So those people who feel strongly about the vote in person can still have a very similar experience.
Right. So there's a couple issues around that. So with the vote by mail, we don't put anything through the tabulator until that we start that afternoon, and that's in the policies and procedures. But people can come here and put their ballot in a ballot box. So it's kind of the same as if you had a traditional vote. They would come and vote and put their ballot in the box, but they're not there to watch you count, which is what the tabulators are, right? Because we just can't have 5,000 electors in a room watching people count. And that's why you you designate someone on the elected official's behalf to come and watch that. The problem with putting ballot boxes, let's say in each one of our arenas, those ballot boxes, then you would need someone to sit with that ballot box to ensure that it doesn't wander off or people aren't putting things in there. It's got to be locked up. You have to have provisions in place. Like, we just can't sit a ballot box out on a table for a period of time, unsecured, with no security around it. But people are quite welcome, COVID dependent, to bring their actual ballots here and put them in a ballot box. We keep it in the vault. We bring it out when someone wants to put a ballot in, and we put it back in the vault. And that's what we did in 2018 for those people who really wanted to actually put their ballot in the box.
Okay. Mike?
Mayor Lennox, just to clarify around your question, and some of the feedback you heard, and if I'm off base, certainly correct me, but I'm assuming that most of the people, it was the day of the election they were looking for these alternate sites, not necessarily having to drive to Kenilworth. Am I right about that? That it would be just kind of either the day before or the day of the election?
Well, the day of primarily, absolutely. It's the people talked about, the experience of, going to the polling location and casting their ballot as part of their election day routine. I just wanted to find out, what's the feasibility of offering people that opportunity to, I probably misspoke when I said see it go in the tabulator, but what I really meant was to see it go in the ballot box, so that they're not concerned that their ballot is lost in the mail, if I could be so blunt as that.
So if it was for just voting day for a few hours, we could certainly do that and have it in our election procedures. If that's what everyone's hearing that people would really like to do. It'll be interesting too to see how many people do take up those numbers, right? That would be sort of a good statistic to have.
Okay, Steve, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a quick question, Karen. Will that, going this way totally, will that take away the advance polls altogether, or how does that work?
Yeah, you don't need advance polls because people can vote the day they get their ballot in the mail right up till election day by delivering it. So it does take out, we didn't have any advance polls the last time. I guess that's what I had in my head, Mayor Lennox, when you said to be able to vote at different locations. I was thinking of, advance voting, but yeah, on election day, that would certainly be doable.
Okay. Anyone else? Sherry and then Steve.
Yeah, so just to hit on your comment, Mayor Lennox, it's a social event. It's a social event. Voting in small communities is a social event. So somehow incorporate that on voting day, I think that's great. And would alleviate some of the concerns I had last time as well. The other concern that I heard with regards to the mail ballots, where there were a lot of folks that lived in apartments, or I'm going to use 740 Princess Street here in Mount Forest as an example. 740 Princess Street has about 20 different units in there. So what format are we going to use to mail these ballots out? Because there were a lot of folks that didn't get ballots.
Right. So, we put the ads in the paper, and we always have people who, I don't read the paper, I don't listen to anything, so they don't know anyway. But we had people who didn't get ballots, and tenants are an issue because, we don't keep lists of those, but we always order extra blank ballots. And someone fills out the form that they're a qualified elector, which is they're a resident or a tenant or a spouse of one, and we generate a ballot for them that we can mail out, or we can generate it on the spot and hand it to them. It would be the same. The same problem would happen if we did a regular election, because we send out voter notification cards. and those residents wouldn't get them and they wouldn't be on the list. They would then have to come in on voting day and fill their paperwork out and get a ballot. So there has to be some onus on the individual who wants to vote. And I know in 2018, I sent letters and delivered letters to many of the apartment buildings, to the superintendents, and we posted notices where we could get inside, or mailed them to, you know, the condos or whatever, and asked for them to circulate the notice. But if you didn't get a ballot, to let us know and call. The County of Wellington buildings pose a little bit more of an issue because of confidentiality. You know, we can't get their lists. We just can't do that. But we do make every effort, and anybody can come in here up until 8 o'clock on election day, you know, 7:59, and be issued a ballot and vote.
Okay, thank you.
So just to follow up on that, if we did have ballot boxes, say one in Arthur and one in Mount Forest, would there also be the opportunity to issue people ballots in those locations on election day if those circumstances arose?
We'd need a printer and a computer, which are, you know, fairly easy mobile now. They're not big units anymore. And, you know, some blank ballots, and they would be able to be issued a ballot on the spot.
Okay. Steve?
I'm just gonna say just one more thing with the mail-ins. If I was to mail it on election day and it's postmarked election day, does that count? It doesn't, eh?
It has to be received by us by 8 p.m. on election day.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and there's a return. Be sure you have this in the mail by this day, or deliver it.
Okay.
I will say though, when we tried it in 2015, so we had a vote by mail with a manual count, which was a lot smaller of a pool. I'm going to say we probably got 5 returned after the election, and one came in a year later as, you know, not being resident there. This year, after the election, we got 2 back. Now, during the course of the election, if we're getting them back, that, you know, the person's not there, the address is incomplete, we do whatever we can to find out where that individual is, and follow up, if at all possible, to be sure that they're getting a ballot. The other thing that always happens, whether it's a regular election where you get a voter notification card, or a mail-in ballot where you get a ballot, is where you own a property as joint tenants and one of those individual dies. Legally, you now are the entire owner of that property, but until you register a deed to get the deceased individual's name off of that deed, they will continue to get a ballot. And I know that's upsetting to some people, but we have to mail out a ballot as to every owner that's shown on the MPAC list. We may know that Mrs. Smith may be deceased, but if we don't mail that ballot out, and we try to work through the list as well, I mean, we can remove people at our discretion, in terms of, you know, like if we know someone passed away last week and we're mailing the ballots out next week, and we try to cull those lists before the ballots goes out, but we just can't catch them all.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Dan, go ahead.
So on that point, Karen, if somebody does each ballot has the person's name on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a ballot back that you know that person is deceased, what happens in that case?
Then we will, we'll do a Google search, and we look through our own records, and we do an obituary search. And then if I can feel sure that that person is deceased, we will remove them off the list. But what happens, we might have removed some people in 2018, MPAC will put them back on the list up until a deed is registered showing that they are no longer an owner of that property.
I see.
And it is frustrating. Someone may call us in 2018 and say, my spouse died, and we take them off, and boom, they get another ballot in 2022.
Right.
It's a problem for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
And my understanding is we're stuck with MPAC as our list generator for this election.
For this election, and hopefully maybe not the next one. And to be fair to MPAC, they're a property assessment organization. They're not even sure how they probably got into the business of providing the voters lists. But it's what we have, and we have to make the best of it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So I'll call the motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And now we're on to 6B. This is in regard to the restricted parking on Mount Forest Drive. And I'm going to say this is moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report CLK 2021-007, being a report on restricted parking on Mount Forest Drive. And further, that Council rescinds Resolution 2021-21 as follows, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North directs staff to bring a bylaw to the February 8th, 2021 regular council meeting implementing a tollway zone on Mount Forest Drive. Open the floor for discussion. Sherry, go ahead.
So I just really wanted to have this pulled because we had discussed it at the last committee meeting or council meeting, and it's come back, and it's just a change. So I just wanted to highlight and make sure that that change was recognized.
Okay. Karen, go ahead.
Yeah.
And thanks staff for their quick work on this.
I know particularly Councilor Yake really wanted the tow zone, and the way it was positioned to me by the police, and the police will enforce whatever we put in. They're very clear about that, but they wanted you to know that if we change that to a tow zone, that's the only option they have available to them. Right now, they have the option of ticketing or towing. Once we make that a tow zone, so let's say there's 3 vehicles there, they really aren't impeding anything, but they could ticket them. If we changed it to a tow zone, they're going to have to tow them. They can't ticket them. And that's time consuming for them. And in their discretion, if any of those vehicles are blocking or impeding access, they would certainly have it towed.
Thanks, Karen. Any other questions or comments? Just a question I have, and I haven't had a chance to monitor it, but has this continued to be a problem with parking in that location? Is anybody aware of, or was this the sort of a one-off bad event? Dan, do you?
Well, a week ago, when we certainly had more snow, there was not the number of vehicles either at the school or on the street. So it may have been just a one-off. I don't know, but there certainly wasn't the number of vehicles around. And whether there's more snow in different areas, people can get on at different spots, well, then maybe that's the case.
Just as follow up, I haven't I haven't officially notified No Frills and Canadian Tire yet, because I didn't want to send them a letter, after the last council meeting, then have to send them another letter saying, and by the way, this is what we're doing now. So I wanted to wait until we're sure here, what position and direction you want to go before I get those letters out.
Okay.
And enforcement.
I saw someone else with a hand up. Who was that? No, go ahead, Karen.
Just a reminder, enforcement can't proceed until the signs are up. And my understanding is they're ordered, and the day they get them, they will be up. maybe the day after.
Okay. Okay. Steve?
I was just going to say, just to go off a little bit further about what Councillor Yake was saying, I think a lot more municipalities and snowmobile clubs actually open up their trails. So there's more access and not just it's not just West Grey that has their trails open now. So I think that alleviated a lot of the problem on Mount Forest Drive for sure. So I'm hoping it's a one-off.
Yeah. Okay. Dan, go ahead.
Okay, well, so the bylaws as written contains the towing provision, correct, correct, Karen? Okay.
Yes, it does.
Okay, and you're saying if we put that in there, that's all they can do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, in this instance, and after having maybe thought about it a little bit more, the no parking area is fine with me. I just don't want the issue to interfere with the local businesses that are on that street. That's the concern. Vintex was very concerned about it. You know, we didn't get anything. I don't think we got anything from No Frills or Canadian Tire, but they're part of that throughway or that street. So I'd be okay with just having the parking bylaw, no parking bylaw in there, and letting the police use their discretion to make that decision.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. So when we do this, we'll proceed with the no parking zone. We're just not going to move it to the towaway right away so that the police have discretion.
So right now it is a no parking zone. That bylaw was passed at the last meeting. Enforcement will start as soon as the signs are in.
Okay. Great. Matt?
And through you, Mayor Lennox, and this is maybe a bit of a curveball, but the no parking signs will contain a wording as a no tow zone or a tow zone too. That's what we've ordered, so.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't know that. I just made a phone call
All
to Dale. Sorry, I didn't know that.
That's okay. So the signs aren't saying it's strictly a towaway zone. It just says no parking and vehicles may be towed, or
Yes.
which is accurate.
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion on this one? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And now we're on to 6C. And we've got a recommendation here that is quite lengthy, but I'll read it anyways today. Moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report CLK 2021-008 being a report on volunteer engagement, and further that Council support the recommendations outlined in this report as follows. One, first bullet point, enhance the volunteer webpage on the Township of Wellington North website. Link the pinnetwork.ca as an option for individuals seeking opportunity. Showcase stories on the website of volunteer appreciation in the community. Create a campaign with community storytelling, describing volunteer opportunities and celebrating local volunteers. Develop ongoing outreach via Zoom, in-person presentations, training, and events to engage with the community. A National Volunteer Week proclamation, messages from Mayor and Council, volunteer appreciation certificate from the Township. Place a thank you in the local newspapers during Volunteer Week. Host a volunteer appreciation event in conjunction with Culture Days. And host a mayor's breakfast lunch attended by volunteers. And further, that council support a $10,000 financial contribution for implementation of from the council special projects account. Open the floor for discussion. Anybody want to volunteer? Dan, go ahead.
I think this is a good start. I think it's a really good, I think there's lots in there that we can do as a community to not only engage volunteers, but to, show our appreciation, celebrate who they are and what they do. So I think this is a really good start. There's lots in there, and I think we can make some good progress moving forward.
Okay. Over to you, Sherry.
Yeah, so again, I think this is a program that's long overdue. We know that in our communities, volunteers do a lot of great work. Some of my questions revolve around the financial considerations. Not that I don't want to spend the $10,000, but I'm wondering about the PIN membership and the PIN volunteer engagement training sessions, how we will gauge the success of using those measures, other than, of course, the obvious, which would be participation, and whether they would be reviewed, whether it would be sort of reviewed on an annual basis, where we could then take some of those dollars and put it into more of the appreciation aspect of the program. And I'm not sure who wants to talk to that point from staff.
Okay, I see Mandy's face has popped up, so I'm assuming she wants to tell us something about that.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Lennox, through you to Councillor Burke. Great points, and absolutely the project team are definitely willing to review each of the recommendations annually to see what's working, where we can adjust things. Right now, the dollars that are under the financial considerations, those are estimates, but we do feel that they accurately reflect what the project entails, but we can certainly look at reviewing the volunteer engagement training sessions and the PIN membership as to their effectiveness.
Okay. Steve, I think I saw your hand up, didn't I?
Yes. No, I was just going to say, I think this is a great idea. I don't know where we'd be as a community without volunteers. They're certainly the backbone of our community and are in the spirit within each, even a hamlet like Kenilworth here, or Damascus, or a big town. So I think giving them a nod and putting these recommendations in place is a great start as well to recognize them and hopefully get the next generation of volunteers going as well.
Okay. Anyone else would like to participate in the discussion? I would just add as well that I think we all recognize how important volunteers are and how important they are to our day-to-day lives, and it's hard to know what our role should be sometimes with helping to keep volunteers engaged and recruited, but there's certainly lots of need in our community, and it's important to the cultural makeup of our community. So I think this is a good start. We do need to probably continue to look for what's needed in the future and adapt to that as it's been suggested. So I think as someone else said, this is a great start. Oh, I see Adam with his hand up. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, thank you, Mayor Lennox. And through you, perhaps just a point of clarification as it pertains to the funding source for this. It does have a council special projects account established as the funding source. However, just for council's awareness, there was no specific allocation from the operating budget to facilitate these works for 2021. So my recommendation would be that we use the tax rate stabilization reserve to fund this, to offset any potential operating costs that are incurred as part of this initiative, should council be in acceptance of the recommendation.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification, Adam.
My pleasure.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, then all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And I think that brings us to the end of our items for consideration today. So that would bring us to notice of motion. Anybody have a notice of motion today?
No.
Okay. Excuse me, we'll move on to community group meeting program report. Anybody have anything they'd like to report on with regard to that today? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, the only meeting that I have had lately has been the rec meeting, and we already went through that. And the next rec meeting is March 2nd. So.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd like to report today? Okay. I would just do a little update regarding the COVID-19 and vaccinations and so on. As I'm sure most of you are aware, we meet almost every week, not every week, but almost every week with the medical officer of health, Dr. Mercer. And we had one of those calls this morning. And one of the major topics of discussion was around vaccination. And so while we're not getting much vaccine into Ontario to begin with, there are plans being formulated right now for when we do have lots of vaccine, so that we can have mass vaccinations across the county for residents as we get, the most critical ones, the high priority ones dealt with first, and more vaccine becomes available. There's plans being put together for mass vaccination. Wellington, the County of Wellington has brought in Paul Johnson to kind of head up a team to coordinate that. So they're looking at locations and the logistics of putting together mass vaccination clinics where, perhaps, in the thousands of people could be vaccinated in a day when vaccine becomes available. And so that I am also attending a call tomorrow with provincial representatives talking about vaccinations. As if you think about the challenges of scaling up to vaccinating thousands of people in a day, it's a very daunting thing. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of record keeping, a lot of logistics and security and traffic direction and all those types of things. I think there will be a need for volunteers to help drive this as well. So I'm just, putting that out there that maybe if each of us has some time to devote to contributing to that, this is going to be a very important thing for our community. Or if there are groups in our community, the people that have time, once we get to down the road, there may be opportunities for, we just talked about volunteering, but volunteers to help facilitate this type of thing too. So there may be like a semi-permanent vaccination clinic set up across the county, and then there also may be some what they're calling pop-up clinics scattered around, so that if certain groups of residents can't get to the central location, that they can get to a smaller location, whether it be in Mount Forest or Arthur or Palmerston or Harriston or Drayton, wherever across the northern part of the county. Of course, there will be vaccination clinics in Guelph, vaccination clinics, I believe, in Orangeville. And right now they're looking at a larger clinic location centrally in the county, and probably Fergus, and then probably some pop-up locations elsewhere. So stay tuned as we get further down the road. This is kind of a more exciting piece of news related to COVID-19, but there will be more human resources needed to make it all happen as well. So, and please, if you have thoughts or concerns, bring them to my attention, and I'll make sure to carry them forward to the discussion as we go. along the good news story out of that call this morning too is the numbers are coming down nicely across Wellington County and across the region. And I think based on the Premier's announcement earlier today, likely we will be moving out of the stay-at-home order, I think potentially as early as next week. And so that may allow some businesses to reopen depending on what that looks like. So let's hope the case numbers continue to stay down and we all keep each other healthy as we go forward to look forward to a brighter future. I don't think I have any others for today. Is anybody, last call for anybody else have anything they'd like to report on today? Okay. Then I think that moves us on to bylaws. So we have 4 bylaws and 1 recommendation. And the recommendation is moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that bylaw number 10-21, 11-21, 12-21, and 13-21 be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And then we have a closed meeting session. So we'll pass the resolution to move into closed. And for those of you who are joining us today, we'll take a little break and then we will go into closed session. We will come out of closed session. Any decisions that come out of our closed session will be done in open session following the closed session, will be reported in the minutes. And with that, I'll say moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that the meeting will move into that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North go into a meeting at 4:02 p.m. that is closed to the public under subsection 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, specifically for item C, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. And we'll be dealing with the reports, report EDO 2021-005, industrial land update and sale. And we'll be dealing with review of our closed session minutes from December 14th, 2020. So call the motion. All those in favor? We're in closed. So we'll just take a couple of minutes and